And welcome back to the Journey to the FarLands. All right, okay, I got some stuff to get rid of course. So let's break out of here, head out here. Let's see, nothing unpleasant about, which is a good thing because I didn't really give it a careful look. All right, close this up and find west, which is that away. All right. And hop into a boat and get moving. Alrighty, so here we go. It is the morning of the 553rd day since leaving spawn for this 182nd episode of the Journey to the FarLands. And let's see, the world size at the beginning of this episode is 6,707.8 megabytes, getting up there decently. And let's see. Yeah, continuing onwards in Minecraft Beta 1.7.3, heading for the FarLands. Using this older version of Minecraft because it's the last one in which the FarLands actually existed. Yes, I know there are mods that can bring them into existence in modern versions, but I have this one, so I don't see any point in changing. It's not like I'm ever going to build a whole lot in the way of bases or much of anything. I mean, when I get to an F3 point, I would probably, or almost certainly, build some kind of a monument or something like that, but it's not a base that one would use for any kind of a serious length of time. It's just you build it, you move on, and leave it there. And so on. You know, it's built for the occasion, and then you move on. And you never return. Because with the FarLands being approximately 12.5 million blocks from spawn, and it being a really good guess that it could take 20 years or more to get from spawn to the FarLands by walking, that I think it's safe to say that any bit of terrain that you come to, once you pass it, you are never going to see that exact piece of terrain again. Because, well, the only reason I can think of for going back over previous terrain is mostly going to be because you died and had to go and respawned back at a previous bed. Which is, of course, why I leave the beds back there, so that if I do die, at the very most, I will only lose one Minecraft day's worth of progress. Okay, this was a terrible bit of routing. Yeah. Yeah, because waking up all the way back at spawn, that would be bad. Hey, oh, ay, ay. That was one of those blow your ears out sneezes. You know, you sneeze, you try to hold it back, and it puts all this pressure in your ears, and you think, oh, wow, my eardrums just hit the wall. Yeah, I know, that's a heck of a picture. What can I say? Yeah. Anywho, continuing onward here, one of the things that I do is to pass the time and have something to talk about is answering questions. And I have a fair pile of them accumulated over time. And so, let's get to some of them. Let's see. Coit Henderson asked, TFC, if you could afford it, would you be willing to have an operation on your arm that would surround the bone and get it to where it would be straight and not in three pieces anymore? You know, once upon a time, a bunch of years ago, I talked with an orthopedic surgeon about just such a thing, of surgically getting my arm fixed. And what he told me was that, yes, it would be possible to go in surgically, re-break the arm, and then position everything so that when the break healed, it would all grow together and it would look like it's supposed to and be shaped the way it's supposed to be and so on. But there was a big but with that. A huge big but. And it's not the kind of big but that people like. Or that some people like. Anyway. This particular but was a pretty big one. You see, in the process of doing this surgery, the main nerve that runs down the arm, that in fact makes it possible for you to use the arm and the hand on that arm and so on. That nerve would, in the process of doing this, be cut. It would be required. It's part of the procedure. That nerve would be cut. When the procedure, at the end of the procedure, it would be placed, the two ends of it would be placed back together. But the big but on this is that there is only a 50% chance that the two ends would grow back together and allow the nerve to function. In other words, if that didn't happen, the arm, while looking perfectly normal, would be totally and completely, absolutely beyond any hope, useless. It would be a decorative piece of meat. It would not be able to be used for anything. And while currently I have a limit, I can't pick up a whole lot with it. You know, I can't pick up any serious amount of weight. Anything more than 5 or 10 pounds is too much. And so on. And there's a lot that I can't do with it. The fact remains that I can actually still use it. And that's worth a heck of a lot. Even if it is misshapen, and even if it is weaker than it needs to be, and it's like, well, because the bones are not actually attached to each other, that upper arm break, where the upper arm, the bones of the upper arm are not attached to the bones that grow to the elbow and so on, that basically, if it weren't for skin and muscle tissue, the arm would have fallen off. Because that's the only thing holding it on. Yeah. Peachy, isn't it? But, yeah. Faced with the risk of potentially losing all use of the arm, I opted not to have the surgery. Well, of course, another factor is that said surgery would cost many thousands of dollars that I simply didn't have, and didn't even actually have insurance that would have covered it. So, as nice as the idea sounds, as awesome as it sounds to have the arm all the way back to normal, it's not going to happen. Probably not ever. At least not unless there are serious miracles in medical science and my ability to pay for said medical science. You know, I don't hold out a lot of, if actually any, hope for that to happen anytime in the next 20 years or more. Eventually, almost certainly, it will get there. But it ain't happening anytime soon. Guarantee you that. Okay, so moving onwards. Next up, individuals signing themselves as High Insanity says, how do you pronounce Arkansas, and do you think you could build me a room in the vault? Well, rooms in Vault 6 are there for the members of Hermitcraft who make it to the vault before it's either full or closed on account of a cataclysmic event. And, yeah, we can't let just... If everybody who wanted to get onto Hermitcraft did, then the people who played it, you know, those of us who are actually hermits, wouldn't be able to. Because no server alive, no server in existence could host that many players at the same time. It just wouldn't be possible. So, sorry. No rooms in Vaults, no custom rooms in Vault 6. It's just totally not practical for many reasons. Not the least of which is Vault Tech has not authorized it. Let's see. Tamerlane asks, hi TFC, do you plan to ever try live streaming on Twitch again? I would love to. I really would love to. I had a lot of fun doing it. And the reason I stopped is because, well, frankly, I was bored one day and I went to my Twitch channel and I looked at some of the archive footage of previous streams, and I saw how incredibly horrible the video looked. And, you know, because it isn't possible for me to allocate enough bandwidth for the video to look good because of the ISP I've got and my 0.5 megabit per second upload rate. Because of all of that, the most I can ever assign to Twitch or any other live stream thing, the most bandwidth that I can ever set it to use is 512 kilobits per second. Not megabits, kilobits. That's the most I can set. And the video resulting looks absolutely horrible. Pixelated and so on. It's one thing, it's okay if I'm like standing still, but if I start moving, it starts getting blurry and pixelated and just genuinely the kind of things that people are talking about when they say the words terrible, awful, hideous video. And so, having seen that and how really genuinely awful that was, I opted to wait until such time that I could actually use like 2,500 kilobits per second, which is what I understand a lot of people use, or at least at that time that's what a lot of people used, and would produce a decent stream quality, a decent video quality on the stream. When I can use enough bandwidth, when I have enough bandwidth to use and get myself good streaming quality, I will be thrilled, more than happy, ecstatic even, to be able to resume the practice of live streaming. I really will. When that's going to happen, I couldn't begin to even guess. So, let's see. Okay, moving on here. We have a name that I'm going to have to stop and see if I can pronounce. Okay. Okay, in one of, this person made several comments, a couple of comments, and they said, just call me Hyena. So I'm just going to say that. Hyena asks, hi TFC, do you ever, no, FAQ question here. How do you play Minecraft with your hand broken so much without hurting yourself? Okay, there's the key right there. It's not my hand that's broken. It's my arm. The break is in the upper arm between the shoulder and the elbow. My hand is not involved. So that's probably it right there. You know, and since I'm sitting at a computer using the keyboard to play Minecraft, it's not like a whole lot of complicated arm movements or anything like that are necessary. My arm stays in one spot, and I just work my hand to operate the WASD keys. You know, that's simple enough. So, yeah, it's not my hand that's broken, which is a good thing. I mean, in the late 1970s, I did break my wrist. Both bones in my wrist were broken, and I wore a cast for 6 months, and that healed up and so on. My wrist is shaped a little bit funny because it wasn't set properly, but it works and I can use it, and so on and so forth. But yeah. Okay, same person asks, why do I live on so little? Because that's what I have. Really? That's really simply it right there. I live on so little because a little is what I've got. It would be nice to have a lot. It would be awesome to have a lot. But the simple fact of the matter is that's not the case. Maybe someday it will be, but for right now, you know, what you do is you do what I learned growing up in a poor family. You make do with what you got. You have to, because the alternative is to not do. You know, you don't have a choice. Okay, next up, let's see. Okay, another broken arm related question here. Vlaron Giamilli or something like that. He says, P.S. You can just call me Guy with a Hard Name. Okay, Guy with a Hard Name. He asks, what exactly happened 19 years ago in the car accident? If you don't want to answer the question, please don't. Yada, yada. Okay. Well, what happened was I was driving to work one morning. It was a pretty nice job, too. I was working in a machine shop programming computer-controlled cutting machines. It was really cool. I got to sit on my butt and use my brain instead of the other way around. Or, you know, instead of having to use my brawn, I got to use brain, and I loved that. That was fantastic. Great job. No stress. So I was on my way to work one morning, and in those days, I had a really bad habit. You see, I had to get to work, I had to leave the house at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And in those days, I had a really, really bad habit of staying up, messing around on the computer until 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. And so one morning, I had gone to bed at something like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. The alarm goes off. I got up and I got in the car and started driving to work. And I was about halfway there when there was one of those big brick signs that announces, you know, welcome to and the name of the town. And it's right where you go around a curve. And, well, in that particular situation on that day, I didn't go around the curve. Not by choice, but you see, I fell asleep while driving. And so instead of following the curve as you're supposed to do, I went straight. And I woke up after I hit the sign at 45 miles an hour. The sign that was made of brick. It was like a foot thick, and it's made of brick. So, pretty doggone solid. And I hit that sucker at 45 miles an hour. Yeah. And, yes, I was wearing a seatbelt. You know, people ask me that. And yes, I wore a seatbelt. I always wear a seatbelt when driving. Not because I want to, or because I think it's a good idea, because I disagree with that. And people will call me crazy if you want. I don't care. But the main reason, and the only reason I wear seatbelts, is because the law says you have to. And I do not want to pay a ticket for being caught not wearing one, you know? Those get to be expensive tickets, and I don't want them. And so, yes, I was wearing a seatbelt. But in the process of the crash, my left arm, hit the steering wheel. The upper arm, between the shoulder and the elbow, hit the steering wheel. And it caused a break that pretty much ran lengthwise down the bone with a twist, if I recall correctly. And that's pretty much what happened. One piece of the bone was floating free. Second piece was attached to the elbow. The third piece was attached to the shoulder. And never did they meet again. Oh. Yeah, so that's what happens. The lesson there is, if you're really, really tired, don't drive. Because this will only end in tears. It's really not good. That situation is what brought on the first and only time I've ever been on a helicopter, or any flying machine for that matter, because they put me in a helicopter to fly me to a hospital in Jonesboro. And so on. The big depression point, the big downside of that, well, not a depression point, a downside there, a bummer on that was that I was trapped in this laying down position in the back of the thing, and all I could see was the ceiling and the sky out the window. I couldn't actually see anything of the flight, which would have made it interesting. Yeah, so, and oh, by the way, okay, let's see, next up, Lady Warpledinker asked, I know you had a wife that passed away years ago. Do you ever or have you ever considered seeking out new companionship? Have you ever been on or tried any dating apps? The answer to the dating apps is no. Because it just seemed like a recipe for instant scam. It really did. You know, it's one of those instant scam things. It's so prone to scamming because you've got, well, let's face it, basically speaking, you've got desperate people, and this is an opportunity to separate them from their money. And so I have never trusted such things and never used such a thing. Have I considered seeking out new companionship? Yes, all the time. But I don't think there is a whole lot of hope in that regard. Because, well, it has to do with my preferences and tastes. Specifically, I am not interested in women that are in my age group, or heaven forbid, older than my age group. It's just, it doesn't work for me. And I know this because I tried it once. And the only thing I will say about it is that it was not great and it did not end well. So I decided at that point that my interest would stay where it has been all of my life. You know, basically my interests, tastes and preferences, what have you, in women pretty much they're the same as they were when I was 19. You know, the women that would have done it for me, would have worked for me when I was 19, would work just as well right now. But, of course, there is a hitch in that get along, in that not very many of them are interested in guys my age. I do know that such women do in fact actually exist. It's just that most of them are already involved. Yeah. And a high percentage of them are involved with guys older because of what you might call the sugar daddy syndrome. You know, they're not looking for companionship so much as they are looking for somebody to spend lots of money on them. And if that's what they find, and that's what the guy in question is happy doing, great. You know, more power to them if they get a situation where that works for everybody involved. But, yeah. Being the guy who is of somewhat smaller means than that, I am not seeking that kind of a relationship. I wouldn't seek that kind of relationship. You know, I am more interested in someone who is there because she wants to be, and not because of what could be given or inherited or what have you, you know. I'm funnily a little bit old-fashioned that way. And so I think it's a given that the odds of anything happening in that particular vein are really slim. To use a polite term, really, really slim is a good way to say it. In other words, don't hold your breath, because you will turn various shades of blue. All right, get the bed down here. Make some more beds. And say 2 more boats. Collect my workbench. All right, and that's pretty much gonna do it for this episode of Journey to the FarLands. And hopefully I will get back to this again really soon. I really want to make this at least a once-a-week thing. And who knows, maybe 2 or 3 times a week would be awesome too. So, thanks for watching. Take it easy. I am out of here.